You and God don't have covenant, because for you and God to have covenant means you have to keep terms, and if you fail, you die. And there's no man that cannot fail. God can't trust you to be in covenant with him. He will wipe away the human race. So God created man out of God to represent man in the covenant. So listen to this. God and Jesus are in a covenant. You are just a beneficiary.
Hello, brethren. Welcome to the Four Gospels page, a channel of a non-denominational community of saints and Christ-seeking believers with the sole aim of evangelizing and propagating the gospel of Christ and Him crucified, by way of bringing you Christocentric messages and doctrinal teachings from various anointed men of God. Now join me as I take you into the service. Be a blessing to others by liking, commenting, and sharing this broadcast. Remain blessed as you do this. Shalom.
In Genesis chapter 15, Abraham walked to God, or God rather walked to Abraham and said, I am your shield, I am your exceeding great reward, I am God. Abraham said to God, hold it, don't, I'm enough of promises. Don't promise me anything. Is there in Genesis 15? Then Abraham said to God, what will you give me now, seeing I go childless? You have blessed me, I have money, I have everything, and the only thing you gave me as a human being is a servant. Is it this servant that will inherit my wealth? Where is my own child? So God saw that Abraham has started doubting his promises, and God cannot work in an atmosphere of doubt. So God has to fix Abraham from doubt, because without faith it's impossible to please God. God had to fix Abraham from doubting, because remember, God told Abraham, in you shall all families of the earth be blessed. So I have to fix this guy. So God Almighty said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out what do they do in Abraham's city to put an end to doubt, because Abraham is already doubting my plan. So God came to Abraham's city on a tour to find out what do they do to put an end to doubt. And then God discovered that in Abraham's city they had what they used to call the covenant making ceremony. And the reason why they used to make covenant was to end doubt. It's like in Africa, you promise somebody something and said, are you sure you will do it? Are you sure? He says, look, I swear to God. Is that true? In fact, in Nigeria, we will touch the ground. That's to say, I swear nothing will change it. So God came to Abraham's town to find out how they do so that God can do for Abraham, so that Abraham will stop doubting. But when God came, he found out that in Abraham's town it was covenant. How did they used to do it? If there are farmers and fighters, the fighters, because of fighting, don't have time to farm. So when they finish fighting battles, they come back, they are hungry. The farmers, because of too much fighting, they don't have time to train. So when their harvest comes, their enemies will come and collect it. So the farmers and the fighters will decide to cut a covenant. The farmers will say to the fighters, we provide food. The fighters will tell the farmers, we protect. Now, but that's not enough. So what they used to do in Abraham's time was to cut covenant. The elder of the farmers and the elder of the fighters will meet, two of them, and discuss the terms of the covenant. And it was usually a lengthy conversation. At the end of discussion, when they agree on terms, they will now come to the families of fighters and farmers and share with both families the terms of engagement. Then they will take animals to what we call the covenant making site, and they will come with the covenant making sword. Then when they arrive, they will line up the animals, and the priest will slice the animals in two equal halves. When the animal bodies fall into two equal halves, blood will come from the two sides into that middle of the pieces of the animals and create a bloodline. The elder of the farmers will stand on one end, and the elder of the fighters will stand on the other end. And the elders among the two elders will do what we call the walk of blood. So they will pull off their shoes. The families will be on the both sides watching, and the elder will go like, on behalf of the farmers, I walk the walk of blood, and I swear to so and so deity that we all believe in, that from today we and the farmers are blood brothers, and if we betray them, may we die the death. Then the other elder will do the same. Then two of them will come together, they will walk and meet in the middle of the bloodline. Then they will cut their bodies, they will mix their blood, they will lick their blood. Then they will mark every member of the families and give them a covenant mark. They will share gifts, and from that day the farmers and the fighters have become blood brothers. And if you touch one farmer thinking it's a small person, the whole fighters will come on you, because you touch one, you touch all. So when God saw that, God said, wow, this is interesting. Abraham, get animals. Is there in Genesis 15? Get animals, let's go cut covenant. Because I want to end your doubt. Abraham took animals. They went to covenant making site. God told Abraham, slice the animals into equal halves. Abraham sliced the two animals into equal halves. God stood on one side, Abraham stood on one side. And because God is senior, God started the work of blood. And God said, I, Jehovah, because there's none greater than I swear by myself that from this day I will not lie to Abraham. The moment God started talking and working the work of blood, Abraham fainted because Abraham was too small to watch deity swear. Now, when Abraham fainted, God worked that work of blood and came back and waited for Abraham to work on behalf of man. Abraham was dead, my friend. That guy couldn't wake up. God waited and waited. Abraham never woke up. God left. Is there in Genesis 15? After some days, Abraham woke up and went back. Then in Genesis 17, God came to Abraham and said, young man, the other day, what happened to you? I was waiting for you to walk the walk of blood. You never woke up. And then God said, okay, to prove to me that you believe me, go into your room and circumcise yourself. I need you to bring out blood from your body. So Abraham entered, circumcised himself to convince God that he now believes God. Now, but remember, that covenant is not complete, because a covenant is a pledge, an agreement between 2 or 3 parties to carry out certain terms. And now in that covenant, only God walked, man never walked. So the Old Testament is an incomplete testament. Are you with me here? So one day, Jesus showed up on behalf of man. Jesus the man. On the way to Golgotha, when he carried the cross, they began to beat him. Blood was dripping, and he was walking the work of blood on behalf of man to complete that covenant that was started and nobody could complete it. As they were beating him, the blood was dripping. As they were beating him, the blood was dripping. So that's why the moment he mounted the cross, he said, it is finished. What was finished? The old covenant is finished. I have completed man's demand of that covenant. I feel like I'm preaching. If you're hearing me shout, I hear, I hear. Sit down and listen. Give me 5-10 minutes, I'll soon be done. Are you catching the revelation? Somebody say, can you prove it? Yes, it happened between David and Jonathan. The Bible says the love between David and Jonathan was stronger than the love of a man and a woman. And one day, David came to visit Jonathan, and the soldiers in Jonathan's house stood David out and said, who do you want to see? Bloody civilian. And David said, I want to see Jonathan. Jonathan was a 5-star general in the army of Saul. And so they came in and told David, and Jonathan said, let him come in. David came in and told Jonathan, I don't like the way your men assault me all the time. I come to see you. Is there something you can give me that gives me access? So Jonathan said, no problem. From today, they will not assault you anymore. Jonathan pulled out his 5-star uniform and gave to David and collected David's civilian uniform. Now, how many of you realize that when David was coming in, he was stopped and questioned? But as he went in, he changed uniform. As he's coming out with the 5-star general uniform, how many of you know those same soldiers will have to do an attention for David? Because it's not about David, it's about the uniform. I don't know if you're hearing what I'm saying. One day Jonathan died and only David was left. Saul died. David took over the throne in Israel. One day David stood up and said, is there not any left of the house of Saul? Let me show him some kindness of God. I want to display goodness on somebody. And then Ziba said to David, there's one by the name of Mephibosheth, but Mephibosheth is in a city called Lodebar. David said, go get him. They went and got Mephibosheth. He was lame on his 2 legs, and lame people are not permitted into royalty. But this guy was lame, and the king has sent for him. So they brought Mephibosheth to the city of David. David came out and looked at Mephibosheth, lame on his legs, and he said, Mephibosheth, from today you will eat continually on my table for Jonathan's sake. Mephibosheth said, I'm sorry, I'm a lame man, I'm just a dog. David said, you can be a baboon, you can be a monkey, it doesn't matter. It's not about you, it's about Jonathan. I'm preaching. If you're hearing, shout, I hear you. Jesus and God entered a covenant on your behalf. See, the covenant is not between you and God. The covenant is between Jesus and God. Jesus represents man and God represents deity. Between the two of them, God cannot fail, Jesus cannot fail. That's why that covenant is an unbreakable covenant. By 2 immutable things, it's impossible for God to lie. What are those things? God and Jesus. So listen carefully. You and God don't have covenant. You and God don't have covenant, because for you and God to have covenant means you have to keep terms, and if you fail, you die. And there's no man that cannot fail. God can't trust you to be in covenant with him. He will wipe away the human race. So God created man out of God to represent man in the covenant. So listen to this. God and Jesus are in a covenant. You're just a beneficiary. You're just a beneficiary. Am I talking to somebody?